it was kind of a
Hail.
it was kind of a point of time. So I'm based on the South Coast and kind of grew up on the South Coast. And then my parents are from sort of Northampton way. So there was an opportunity. We all kind of moved back towards Northampton. And it was a kind of a time where it was like, right, I can flee the nest, as it were. My only goal was to work in London. I wanted to get to London, and it was kind of, how can I get there without going into London straight away? So basically got to a point, threw my CV at every business I could possibly find, and then was kind of lucky enough to go and start working for a company called Accent Office Interiors, which is now Habit Action. So Michelle, who you had on, I worked with Michelle towards the back end when I went back there, but I kind of worked there and was the first designer in. So again, learning the very hard way, where you go into a business, they've got no internal design, and you end up wearing every hat across that business, where you're technical design, you're creative design, you're pitching, you're doing whatever, and kind of any questions creatively come to you. So I kind of fell into it that way because it was just the way. It was the opportunity that came to me at the time, I suppose.
No, that's nice. So you mentioned storytelling. Is that just a bit of a gimmick or a buzzword, or what is a trend you're jumping on?
I think it's one of them. I think for me, it's a huge foundation of what I do, but I don't necessarily think it is for everybody. And there's not a right and a wrong in that. The amazing part of us being designers is that we're all slightly different, right? So the way you get different designs out of people is different ways of thinking and stuff. So, but for me, it's a huge foundation as to what I do, because I find it very, very difficult to design without some sort of why and some sort of story, because it kind of allows me to stay on track. As a designer, you get the joy of sort of having imposter syndrome a lot. So you go, oh, am I making the right decision? Am I doing the right things? But by kind of having that why and that story from very, very early on, it allows me to counteract any questions my mind might take me and go, no, this is my concept, this is my story, let's bring it back. And I think it's a huge part of what I do. So I'm not going to say it's a gimmick, or I'm not going to say it's a kind of buzzword, but I think it might evolve and might change its name over years and the way it looks at it. But I think it's a huge part of what I do.
And has it always been a big part of what you do, or was there a particular time in your career when you're like, oh my goodness, this is amazing, I must like?
Yeah. So I think once I'd moved into London, so I went and worked for an architecture practice called Scott Brownrigg.
Okay, yeah.
Which is a massive learning curve for me. You kind of go from a small D&B company to this enormous business that work on these massive projects, and I work with some really, really great designers there, that you kind of then open your eyes to go, okay, there is thought, there's thinking, there's a story that sits behind all of this. And it just got clicked and went, this is the way that I need to design, because it makes my life so much easier in my own head. You get stuck in a bit of a safe space when you don't have a story, where you go, let's rinse and repeat and do that. And D&B, I think maybe 5 or 10 years ago, or probably 10 years ago when I started in the industry, got a bad name for that.
Yeah, definitely.
And I've seen in the last 6 or 7 years, it's changed drastically to say, actually, there's as much creativity, there's as much new thinking going on in D&B, and probably if not more than there is in the trad world, because of pace and how quickly we get stuff. So I think probably working there and working in that trad world, where you've got a little bit more time to think about design and think about what you're designing, just help open my eyes to go, actually, this is a massive part of what I do, and how I can design, and how I sort of start projects.
Yeah. So how do you, how do you like uncover a brand story? Like, what's your process for that, or what are you looking for?
So I think for me, it doesn't just have to be a brand story or a client story. I think it's just having a bit of an understanding to go, right, I'm going to do a bit of a deep dive into the business that you're talking to, or the client that you're talking to understand what the building's like, what they're like, what their tone of voice is externally and internally, and brand guidelines are huge on that. And then understand what their vision is, to lean into the storytelling kind of narrative. That client is your main character in your story. Like, they are that person or that client or that team that you are taking through that story and taking through those journeys. You're just building the story around them as how to get there and what the outcome is. So I think for me, it's kind of trying to get under their skin as early as possible. We have 2 different routes where we go. You get loads and loads of face time with the client, so you can ask those intriguing questions of kind of pickets and certain ideas you've got. And other times we don't speak to the client at all until the pitch or until a mid-bid. So you kind of have to go and do that deep dive on your own, where it might be that I'll spend the first day, 2 days of a process with the team, go and find as much information about this business as possible, and then let's sit down and go, that sounds good, that could be something we lean on, that could be something we lean on, that could be something we lean on, and all of a sudden it then sort of unfolds. And you'll get some briefs that come in and some sort of tenders that come in where they'll go, sustainability is huge for us, and for us as a B Corp business, it helps because it's sort of ingrained within what we do. So if we're finding it difficult to find a hook or a sort of tangible story that sits with it, we then go down, how does the building work? What's the architecture of the building? Is there history within the building? Is there history within the area as a concept? Pulling in then some of those sustainability elements that come with it as well. So it's that kind of early in-depth thinking that really helps, I think, to sort of start that foundation that everything's then built on.
I mean, yeah, I love it. And I love projects that have got that much substance. I don't really know quite what the right word is here, but I would go substance behind it all. So it's got this proper foundation, and then everything's built off that. What's coming straight to my head though, Jordy, is that I hear D&B is fast paced, you've got no time to return a tender. I hear people saying that literally just deadlines are up at night trying to finish off with it. So how do 2 precious days, how can we
afford them?
Yeah. How do you kind of convince the client that you're gonna, I don't know, how does that look internally?
I think from my side, it's, if you can lay a good foundation early on, it saves you time in the process, and it saves you that kind of mentality of going, you could be a week down the line without that kind of 2 days of thinking and still be no clearer as to where you are. Great, we can crack on with plans, we can crack on with sort of some of those elements, but when it comes to kind of the essence of that design or the essence of that story, that 2 days is invaluable to me. There's business mentality that you sharpen the saw, and you have 2 people who are trying to chop a tree down. One spends 10-15 minutes stopping to sharpen his saw, so his saw's always sharp, not blunt. He'll chop the tree down a lot quicker than the guy who's just chopping and chopping and chopping. And it's kind of taking heed and taking stock to say, actually, I can afford this 2 days at the beginning because it's going to save me 2 weeks in the back end. And I think sometimes you don't always have to have the whole thing figured out. If you've done the bit at the front end, you can kind of go, right, there's a loose concept here, let's drive with this, see where we get to with interaction with clients, and then we know if we're onto a good thing or maybe need to slight pivot and change to something else.